So I believe that by now you've seen where we are headed to. We are making all of us vegetarians, isn't it? And also, we are trying to adopt you to a system where you can be able to eat a well-balanced diet. And we shared with you that these things have been proven by science that they just don't make you stronger, but they also make you live longer. And this is the basis behind which we are doing this study. And I also shared the health message is very spiritual. Remember, there is a connection between how your system works and how your brain functions. And we know that Joseph and Daniel were intellectual giants. That ability was not as a result of chance, it was because of the lifestyle that they were leading. And I shared with you that your life is written in your DNA. You get the point? Your DNA is like the book of what? The book of life, meaning your DNA contains everything about you. But the DNA is not metaphysical. It is a physical part of your body. In all the trillions of cells that you have, there is a DNA that exists, and your DNA depends on nutrition. In the DNA, there are amino acids, isn't it? Cindy? Yes. Yeah, in the DNA, there are sugars. At the same time, in the DNA, there are minerals. By the way, the bonds that connect that double helix that binds them is actually minerals. So if you're having improper balance of these things, then it means your DNA is affected at the end of the day. And you cannot build a mabati house with bricks, can you? Neither can you build a brick house with mabati. You can only build based on what you're given. And the body is using your knowledge and intelligence to acquire nutrients. We are together. So man cannot escape responsibility. That is why we are educating you on that, so that you may understand. So yesterday we had a case against meat, we had a case against eggs, we had a case against meat. And I know the big question that many of you are asking is, where do I then get what? My protein. And we covered something about this yesterday, but I want us to cover more even today, as we look at B12 and then we look at nutrition, and then how to balance your diet. I'm going to teach you how to write a menu. Let's pray as we move forward. Gracious Father, glory and honor be to your name for the far we've come. Knowledge essentially is yours and yours alone. How we pray that I may only be a vessel in the hand of Almighty God. May you take difficult truth and make it simple, that we all can understand this easily. That the grace of God may be supplied in large measure to all of us. That the things we are learning may not be theory, but Lord, that your grace may give us the willingness to live by them. This is our prayer, believing and trusting in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So the question where we like get protein, I shared with you, is exaggeration. Because protein is everywhere. You remember seeing that? It's in the fruits, it's in the vegetables, it's in the nuts, it's in the seeds, it's in the grains. Maybe the question is, how do I combine all my sources of protein? The question should not be where you get protein. That is why we shared yesterday. That a diet consisting of a variety of plant foods will have greater content of what? Essential amino acids that is needed. I think by now you've realized that I shared with you that an adult needs only 30 grams of what? Of protein daily. But the Western diet that we are partaking of, where we take milk, we take eggs, we take beans, at the same time we are taking meat, we normally have over 140 grams per day. And if you remember, we shared that only 30 grams and below will allow you to get calcium in your bones. You remember? We saw that 140 and above, you are losing more and more calcium. So we realized that an excess of protein will not just make your blood acidic, but also will lead to osteoporosis. And apart from that also, it is not just leaching calcium, it is also leaching things like zinc and other trace metals from your body. And we saw that to a large extent then, a high protein diet is very damaging. But remember also, if a high protein diet makes you have excess protein, and this protein cannot be stored by the body can only store fats in the adipose tissue, and it can only store glucose as glycogen and convert it to fat. Proteins have to be deaminated. And because of this, you're going to have ammonia as a byproduct. You remember? Ammonia will combine with carbon dioxide to form urea. When you have a load of urea, excess each and every time, who is burdened? Mr. Kidney, isn't it? That is why a high protein diet is also a leading cause of kidney problems at the end of the day. If you combine that with a lot of medication and some other factors, you will realize you will have a kidney failure sooner or later. But if you look at it, we are seeing that we will have more than we need. No wonder in Councils on Diet and Foods, page 313, we are told grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables contain all the nutritive elements required to make good blood. You get the point? So I shared with you that these are items of protein. Seeds have a high amount. I told you about seeds and nuts, that they are also rich in minerals. And we said you can always make them present in your meal by grinding them into powder and then using a tablespoon to measure, a tablespoon per meal or 2 tablespoons per meal. As I said, pumpkin seeds are a must for men. They are together. Yeah, essentially because of zinc. You will need that zinc, especially to men who are getting married. That will protect you from prostate cancer. It will protect you from prostate enlargement, and also it will protect you from erectile dysfunction, which is a very common problem in many men today. So we saw that we also have protein in fruits. By the way, most of the fruits we have, 8% is usually protein. Apples, 8% of apples are protein, by the way. Did you know that? 40% of vegetables, cabbage, for instance, 40% of cabbage is protein. That is So how many sources of protein do we have? So it's exaggerated that we don't get protein. You get the point? It's an exaggeration. I know that the issue that comes to your mind is you think that excess protein intake is equal to body mass. You get the point? By the way, vegetarian children will always be lower in weight to their counterparts. In case you have kids and you want to make them vegan from childhood, you will never find them having equal weight to those ones who take plenty of cow milk. You get the point? And I introduced to some of these food items. Because I told you what is the basis of early development in a child. The brain, isn't it? Cognitive abilities, intellectual power. And that is what God wants to develop essentially when someone is very young. And refined whole grains, there is a place I want to put my finger on. There is no reform in eating white rice. There is no reform in eating sifted maize. There is no reform in taking processed foods. The puddings, the custards, the cakes, the pastries, the mandazis. If it is not unbolted or unrefined, then it means you are doing deform. By the way, we are told that meat does not do as much damage as a mixture of eggs, milk, and sugar. You get the point? So that simply implies that we need to be very careful. Then we have the legumes, beans and fruits. And I told you, the legumes contain twice more protein than grains, like rice and the rest. And the legumes are very high in a protein element we call arginine. Arginine is very essential and very important amino acid, especially in the development of every aspect. In fact, it's a major component in all amino acid combinations in the body for anything. And that is the reason why you need legumes in your meals at least every day. And we talked about whole grain, bread, fruits, vegetables. This is how you can cook them. I'm going to give you ratios of this, the slices and the servings, so that you may know. But you need to have fruits every day, you need to have vegetables every day in our meals. I'm going to show you a pyramid, so don't worry about this. So plant sources of protein, we saw half a cup of spinach contains 2.5 grams, that is 48 calories. Broccoli half a cup contains 2.5. Lentils, half a cup contains 9 grams. Chickpeas, 7.5. Quinoa, 5.5. Tofu, of course, that is soybeans that has been. So you know what tofu is? You make tofu here, isn't it? In a health food expo, maybe we need to make one. It's usually, that is 20. Soybeans, by the way, it is almost the most complete protein. It has almost all the essential amino acids combined. And that is why we say you can put some soya in your uji when you're making that mixture for uji, and make sure you cook it till it produces its own sugar. If you're putting things like soya into it, so that it may be unbolted. Before some of these grains can be useful to the body and processed well, they must be cooked sufficiently to allow them to be in a form where they can be easily metabolized by the body. Any grain that is undercooked will not be easily digested by the body. And that is why you must give it sufficient heat to break it down. So don't drink uji that is undercooked or ugali that is what? Any grain will make you sick and may cause some serious problems in your digestion. That is why we say the legumes should be soaked not less than 6 hours. Then after soaking, you need to boil and wash separately. You'll find others who may be having issues can take them, and that's it. You need to break it. And that is why we don't recommend a diet where there is no cooking. We are together. There are people who go to extremes. And then they tell you, oh, just blend the beans and eat. Yes, you get the point. Or a fruits only diet. No, you need this. So tofu has more. But you see, if you take tofu and soybeans, you're almost getting to the threshold. That is quite a lot of protein. It is 43 calories, it is 39. So you can imagine if you put that in the uji. Soy milk, 1 cup, 7.3 grams of protein. Mustard greens cooked, 1 cup is 4.4. Sesame seeds, 2 tablespoons, 4.1. Sunflower seeds, 2 tablespoons, 5.3. Soybeans cooked, so you can see, soybeans is highest, 22. This kumawiki, 4.3. Oatmeal. By the way, I would want to tell your students, take a lot of oatmeal. Oatmeal is high in the hierarchy of grains. Oatmeal is high in terms of nutrients. Oatmeal and wheat are usually high in the with just that we are used to maize. You get the point? That is how we are raised up. So we believe maize is everything. But personally, I prefer taking oatmeal for my breakfast. I do my own smoothies using it and other things, and I know I'm well fed. I can do it with something else. I can do it with veggies, and I don't have to do ugali, especially if I know I'm in a hurry. So these are some of the things that you can use in your diet instead of constantly eating ugali all the time. You can do oatmeal. You can also buy barley. It's not so expensive. Just try to play around. But I know a student, that kind of budget line. But I'm trying to prepare you also because you will leave school sooner or later. Yes. You will be having your own course. Average adult needs less than 30 grams of protein per day. So we share that this is quite important. This is what you need to understand. So the world is talking about 140. We are talking about 30 grams. So if you took some veggies and some fruit, and you took some seeds and some legumes, won't you have sufficient? It's more than what you even need. You get that thing. So I don't know why people are making a fuss about protein. And you guys are talking about it, what? It's a lie. What about calcium? Remember, I shared with you that dairy foods are a poor calcium source. It's always a lie. Only 25% of the calcium from the cow's milk is absorbable. Where does the rest go? The rest, they go to form plaques in your arteries. Plaques are a mixture of fat, cholesterol, and calcium deposits. The others go to your kidneys to form kidney stones. Others go to your gallbladder to form gallstones. Because where should they go? They can't go into the bone. The only way they can get into the bone is when you are having significant amounts of magnesium, which usually is lacking. And that is why you find any supplement for calcium that is going to be useful to anyone must also be having magnesium and vitamin D. If anyone is on supplements for calcium, simply because their bones are weak or something, make sure when you're buying a supplement, you look for that one which has magnesium and vitamin D. You'll find most of the time they are combined because you need vitamin D for that synthesis, you need magnesium for that synthesis, and calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D are also muscle relaxers. They are also nerve tonics. So they are very essential in the functioning of the body. High phosphorus in cow's milk causes poor absorption rate of calcium. And I told you that whenever we have high phosphorus levels, then calcium is not absorbed. Well, all the nutrients we need can be obtained without resorting to any daily foods. You don't need them at random at any cost. Plant sources of calcium are more absorbable by our bodies. Humans absorb as much more of the calcium in plant products than they do from. So if you find someone with an issue with brittle bones, put them on simsim seeds, put them on blackstrap molasses, put them on dark green leafy vegetables. Soybeans is also high in calcium, but put them on dark green leafy vegetables. The ones that are very dark green, pumpkin leaves, that category, spinach, mawiki, they take those in large amounts, they will have sufficient amounts of calcium. But sesame seed is the highest as a source for calcium. So if you look at this, you can see 1 milk, 8 grams of protein. Calcium is 290 grams. Phosphorus is 228, interfering with the absorption. This is bitter soy, 9 grams, 80 milligrams, 0 milligrams of phosphorus, meaning you can easily check that. So you can see soy milk is better. This is West soy milk, 300 milligrams, 250 milligrams. You can see it's interfering with absorption. Rice cream milk, this is 300. So you can see that most of the time, dairy and soy products may have some interference unless the level of phosphorus is down. Now, plant foods, you can see this. Oatmeal, 19 milligrams. Lentils, 38 milligrams. Quinoa grain, that is 102. Rutabagas, that is 150. Dandelion greens, 147. Mustard greens, 152. So if you look at this, there's one thing you can tell early. That green leafy vegetables tend to have more calcium than even the lentils and the oatmeal and the other things. Baked beans, 154 milligrams. Sukuma 174. Turnips, 249. Clovers, 254. Hazelnuts, 254. Green soybeans, 261. Figs, 269. Amaranth, 298. Collard greens, 257. Carrot flour, that is 358. So you realize your uji can be a good source of calcium if you have it in soybeans, you put simsim, you put amaranth, you get. If you combine those things in your uji and then you boil it well, your bones will become heavy. By the way, you need to have much of your weight should be in your bones. You heard me? Much of your weight should be in your bones. That will depend on how much you exercise, and also because bone mass is dependent on exercise. Then number 2, if you are getting your calcium from plant-based diet, figs, dried, prunes, prickly pears, raisins, lemon, blackberry, orange, cherry, blueberry. So all those are calcium. So if you look at it, you realize milk is not even significant, because look at the cow milk, 288. Then this is lamb's quarters, these are vegetable, that is food, 5. 16. But this is the one that we normally give patients who are calcium deficient. Lamb's quarter is a kind of herb. It's very hard to find it in the market, but if you go identify it, you'll find it. If it's normally around in Kenya, go Google it. You can identify it even when you go home. It's high, very high in calcium. Mustard greens is also very high. Simsim seeds, I say, is also quite high. Then we have peels, 224 milligrams. So this is just 1 tablespoon, contains 258, just 1 tablespoon. has that sufficient amount. Now, how about iron? Iron is found in a wide variety of plant foods, especially beans and grains. Iron cannot be absorbed without vitamin C and sunshine. So for the absorption of iron, you need to make sure you have vitamin C coming from the fruits, especially the citrus family. And then you need to also make sure you bask in the sun. Those two are recommended for iron absorption. Coffee, tea, and calcium supplements can increase iron absorption. Now, the biggest study that we want us to have today is vitamin B12. We answer a few questions about it. And then from there, we can look at principles that underlie food actually and balancing amino. Now, we need to understand that vitamin B12 is from the B group. You know, we have the fat-soluble vitamins, and we have the water-soluble vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins are which ones?
Vitamin A.
You normally say A, isn't it? A, B, E, and K, isn't it? And then water-soluble?
B, C.
B-complex family and vitamin C, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you look at this vitamin, it's from the B group. It has been discovered through attempts to treat anemia. The reason why it was discovered, by the way, it was discovered quite late, around 1948. Yeah. In 1948, the scientists isolated a red compound from the liver and gave it the number B12. So this compound they found from the liver, by the way, the liver is a storage for vitamin B12. And your liver can store as much B12 that can sustain you for 5 to 6, 7 years. You heard that? Mm-hmm. That could only tell you that this issue is exaggerated. But we're going to look at that. The scientists call this red compound cobalamin because it has cobalamin atom in the middle. That actually implies it has the amino group and it has the cobalt. That name comes from the word cobalt. It has some amount of cobalt and the amino group. So if you look at vitamin B12, vitamin B12 can never work in the body without folic acid, which is also among the B complexes. And that is where you'll find anything, people claim that there are no vitamin B12 in plants, but science is now discovering that there are some plant sources of B12 if they are organically grown. But we're going to discuss that as we move forward. So B12 and folic acid depend on each other because B12 works by removing a methyl group to activate enzyme of folate cofactor. Meaning, for them to be able, you know, the basis of B12 method is for the nervous system, it's for building of blood, the RBCs, and for your brain. You need to understand that for it to be able to function, that is why you realize when you are very anemic, or if a woman is expectant, what are the main things that doctors recommend when they go for pregnancy? Yeah? Folic acid, iron, vitamin C, and of course B12. Now, vegetarians have always been kept around, isn't it? Yeah, I have met quite a number of people personally who are telling me that their doctors are telling them that they need to get back to meat. But if you go and find your free time, in fact, Mr. White says that physicians in our church who recommend people to eat meat for the basis of treatment should be stopped from practicing in the church. It's in the spirit of prophecy. But you go read that. On the other hand, folic acid gives methyl group to the vitamin B12 to activate the enzyme cofactor for B12. So the enzyme cofactors for folate and the cofactor for B12, they are activated by the other. You get B12 activates the one for folic acid, the other one activates for the other. So for them to function, they must work together. So you must also have a high intake of vitamin B12. And this is the structure of B12. It's one of the complicated structures of vitamins that you will ever find. I won't dwell on that. But these are daily requirements that are given by the CDC and the World Health Organization. Now, they claim that an infant 0 to 6 months needs just 0.4 micrograms per day. 0.4 micrograms. Infants between 7 to 12 months need 0.5. Children 1 to 3 years need 0.9. Children 4 to 8 years. And then, of course, all the way up to breastfeeding women need 2.8. Pregnant women need 2.6. So you see, breastfeeding women need more than pregnant women. And this is where I want to put a point, by the way, women who are here. Preparing for pregnancy begins before you even have a family. We are together. From the moment you of conception onwards, you don't have sufficient time to accumulate nutrients that you need for your baby. And that is the reason why pregnant women today must visit the clinic. Why? Because people are eating so impoverished diets that ordinary women cannot be able to carry a baby to term without complications if they don't see a doctor for supplements. You get me? Do you think Kitambo women were constantly visiting clinics when they were expectant? Always worried. Was that there? Were there constant CSS? What has changed? Is it that the uterus of women is becoming weaker over the years? Or maybe their diet is deficient? So you realize right away, the fact that you want to live healthy is a decision you make now, not when you're having a baby. I have met women who had miscarriages persistent. Watoto wa kwanza, wa pili, wa tatu, when they come to me, what I simply do is I change their diet. I do for them a detox. I educate them on how to eat daily. I come up with menus for them that they have to follow. Then within 1 year they have a baby after 3 miscarriages. So what do you think was the problem? It was nutrition, it was diet, hormonal imbalances, and many other complications. So you realize that pregnant women should understand that their needs of nutrition are higher than ordinary people. So adults 18 and more, this is where you fall. 2.8. Teenagers, 2. So if you look at that, you can see the requirements. Now, what are the functions of vitamin B12 in the body? Number one, it has a major role in the manufacturing of energy through maintaining healthy body cells. By the way, without vitamin B12, many of the cells become flimsy. And even the RBCs cannot be able to properly move through the capillaries. You know, one thing is, do you know the capillaries are what size? 5 micro? I think it's 5 micro. It's so small, but the RBCs are 7. So if you look at 7 and 5, what happens to the RBCs for them to be able to move through the capillaries? They must be able to squeeze through, isn't it? Actually, vitamin B12 maintains their shape, their integrity, and gives them flexibility. That is why someone low in vitamin B12 may not be able to have RBCs squeezing in through. They clump a lot, and you realize that interferes with your energy levels because you need oxygen to be able to manufacture or make ATP, isn't it? We are together. So the other thing it provides, it brings us with the energy essential to maintain the proper balance that the body needs to think and move. It has a key role in protecting the heart by removing the homocysteine protein from the blood. By the way, this homocysteine protein is produced a lot by meat eating. The major source of this protein that damages the heart, causing atherosclerosis and other complications, is from eating meat. And that is why protein meat will have major heart conditions. It helps to prevent osteoporosis also by removing homocysteine protein from the blood. So homocysteine is also related to what? Osteoporosis. Another thing, it plays an important role in the process of protein synthesis and the production of hemoglobin, which gives blood its red color. Meaning, if I do for you a full hemogram and we look at your hematocrit and we see how much protein, how much RBCs you have, and how much hemoglobin you have at the end of the day, vitamin B12 will identify whether you have a given type of anemia. Someone sent me a message, I don't know from here, about megaloblastic anemia. A question. I will answer you perhaps later. It helps improve the blood by maintaining adequate concentration of serotonin in the brain. By the way, low levels of B12 will make you moody. High levels of B12, sufficient amounts, will make you sunny and barren. So this is very important. It plays a key role in the synthesis of proteins and fat in the myelin sheath that surrounds the nerve fibers in the brain and spinal cord, and thus protects them. That is why absence of this in children who are developing can impair them for life. It helps in the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. It delays the onset of aging symptoms by maintaining healthy body cells, like we spoke about that. What are the symptoms of B12 deficiency most of the time? An anemia with large macromolecules of large pellets. Meaning it's an anemia where you have very large macromolecules within your blood. Damage to the nerves, declining intelligence, speed of forgetfulness, and short-term memory loss. That is also the feeling numbness in the limbs and difficulty in walking. General fatigue, rapid heartbeat, and breathing caused by the lack of red blood cells and oxygen. I have studied with one and they claim to say that you need to do a yearly B12 checkup if you're a vegetarian. We are together. Yeah, so that you may be able to know if your B12 levels. By the way, if we did checkups on you who are here, will you meet the criteria? Blood, B12, other minerals, your BMI, the amount of water you have in body fat, will you meet all of that? Will you? One of the times when we have an expo, everyone should be checked, so that you are sure that where you are headed is actually correct. Gastrointestinal problems such as constipation, diarrhea, and gases, yellowing in skin color and eyes, depression, because we say it raises serotonin levels, and clear vision and loss of sight, difficulty in speaking. It can interfere with your speech. Most of the time, the treatment that is given ideally for B12 deficiencies give B12 injections, especially in cases of pernicious anemia. I'll talk about that. B12 supplements are given orally. No spray contains vitamin B12, eating foods containing. So essentially, it's to give B12. That is what they give as a treatment. Now, the absorption of B12 requires something we call an intrinsic factor. This factor is usually produced in the stomach. I won't tell about that much. Lack of intrinsic factor causes pernicious anemia. So one thing you need to understand is that this vitamin can be stored in healthy people with healthy liver, sufficient for 5 to 7 years. And the liver contains 50% of the vitamin B12 in stock in the body, while the remainder is distributed within the cells of the body. So 50% of your B12 is actually found in your liver. And ideally, we are taught that to have B12, we must obtain it from the red meat, milk, eggs, cheese, fish, and poultry. So meaning the vegetarian looks like they don't have any source for B12. And this is the reason why many people feel that they have to eat meat at least once a week. Or they have to take eggs at least twice a week. They feel that they have to supply this lack. And usually when you meet someone who is medical, they will try to suggest to you that not eating any of these things will ruin your life and your health. You heard of such arguments? Yeah, they have a point, because what I'm sharing with you, this is what the world is teaching. Any medical school will tell you that you only have to obtain this thing either from fortified foods, or be taking the supplements every day, or animal protein. We also realize that B12 can have diseases. B12 will lower the levels of homocysteine, which we say causes cardiovascular diseases. So you realize that is how it does it. Homocysteine and B12 and methionine combined together, they actually make your system normal. If there is no B12, homocysteine accumulates, you get coronary diseases. The same with osteoporosis. Now, I want us to look at the spirit of prophecy and what our researchers have done. One thing I love with our church is, as much as the world speaks, we have Loma Linda, we have Chipans, we have our own research. Now at this point, science and revelation seem to be. Is it true that we must obtain all our B12 from animal foods? Where did Adam and Eve obtain theirs? I'm not talking about before the fall, after the fall. Between the fall and the flood, where did they obtain it? Man was given a strict leaf in the Garden of Eden. It was intended to supply his food needs for. That is why we say back to Eden. So meaning if we are saying back to Eden, we cannot say that people in this group all must be taking supplements every day. Making sense? Now, we conclude therefore that we are not dependent on animal products to supply the nutrients the body. If Jesus was to appear to the church today, what would he say to the world? You have not knowing that? The testimonies. It is written the drinks, the fruits, nuts, and vegetables contain how many? All the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. So people make a big fuss out of this. What is the meaning of all, by the way? Does it mean all except B12? All means what? All means all. We conclude therefore that we are not dependent on animal products to supply the nutrients the body needs. So we can't say we depend on it. In CI63, this Councils of That 63, we are told you should use the most simple food prepared in the most simple manner, that the fine nerves of the brain be not weakened, benumbed, and paralyzed. Sorry, the way this word appears, I didn't expect it to come out like this. It seems reasonable, therefore, that any neurological problems experienced by vegetarians might be the result of a wrong lifestyle that we have not yet fully determined instead of a diet. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. Meaning we cannot put all the blame on B12. It may be that these people, there's something they're not doing right. You get the point? And remember, not all vegetarians are reformers. If you take this much further, we need to agree that most researches on B12 metabolism are done on vegans. But vegans are neither SDAs nor reformers. You get? So to a large extent, Seventh-day Adventists believe that humans were created in the image of God, and that a program of good health is needed to protect the human mechanism. Vegans, on the other hand, have simply dropped the use of animal products because they believe in a human philosophy towards all animals. So that means they may, if they choose to do so, adopt a lifestyle which allows them to smoke, eat between meals, drink alcohol or caffeine beverages, use rich foods, spices, and other stomach irritants, and otherwise live unhealthily. They cannot, as a group, be considered a proper example of B12 metabolism. Is that making sense? We cannot say that what vegans who are smoking and eating meat and doing all the things that we know are not in harmony with the body and digestion are supposed to be the right group to determine B12 metabolism because of the habits of life which bring on a greater need for B12 or cause the body unable to hold on its what? B12. So that is one point we need to understand. Vegetarians need less vitamin B12. By the way, many researchers have discovered in our church that vegetarians do not need the same amount of B12 as meat eaters. The only way to do this is have a control group and do a test and be able to see how the system operates. Now, among vegans, the levels of B12 in the blood have been shown to be between 60 and 320. I want us to mark these figures. Yet these low levels are not associated with signs of B12 deficiency. Meaning, when you look at most vegans, their B12 levels are actually between 60 to 320 in the blood. We say the liver can store between 1500 to 2000 micrograms of B12, which can actually help you for how many years? 5 to 7 years. But usually in the blood, vegetarians have 60 to 320. In contrast to these levels, certain lacto-vegetarians, who are lacto-vegetarians, so they have been shown to have levels of 115 to 450. You see that is high? Whereas those eating meat in the same general ethnic group have been found to have 170 to 550. The mean values of these three groups, vegans, lacto-vegetarians, and non-vegetarians, run like this. So vegans is 166, lacto 327, then non-vegan 325. Now the vegans, the lacto-vegetarians, and the non-vegetarians maintain these blood levels even though they took a diet that was fortified with vitamin B12, meaning even though they were being given B12 in their diet, it did not change their levels. What does that mean? Is it a deficiency or the body does not want more? Let me ask you, if you're drinking water, and when we measure the amount of water in your body is constant, and you're going for a shortcut, what does that mean? Your body is not using the extra water you're drinking. You get the point? I don't know if I'm making sense. So the point they got is this particular study of blood levels indicates that the vegans do not need a greater level than represented in the blood, 60 to 320. The blood level of 60 would be considered a non-vegetarian to be deficient, and it is quite likely that a person who eats meat, drinks alcohol, or smokes may at a blood level of 60 experience symptoms of B12 deficiency, which someone who does not experience. Apparently, there is a factor in a vegetarian diet that offsets the need for an excessively high level of B12. Meaning there's something in the lifestyle of people who are taking meat that makes them have higher levels of B12, which most doctors and researchers deem pathological. They claim that now because vegans don't reach those levels, then because of that, essentially, they must need supplementation. You get the point? There is something that comes up. So since the original diet is designed for man who's vegetarian, we can regard the high blood levels B12 seen in many who eat meat as being abnormal. So where the problem is not us who are vegetarians, the problem is them. You get the point? It's abnormally high and possibly pathologically elevated as will be discussed. Yet, laboratory norms for B12 blood levels should be based on individual lifestyle, with vegetarian levels probably the ideal, based on what we know. Vegetarians have better vital statistics. One thing you need to understand, they were done in 1970 by Ellis and Mongrifo, and they reported a study on 26 vegans, 12 males and 14 females, compared with controls chosen from the omnivorous public to match as clearly possible the vegan subjects with regard to age, sex, weight, age, and occupation. The vegans were lighter in weight than the controls. So like I shared with you, even vegan babies, if you're intending to have children who are vegan, and you compare their weight with your neighbor who eats meat, they will never be the same. Are we together? Normally, because of our lifestyle and diet, our weight will not be the same. And that is why we cannot be obese. We cannot be obese while vegan. Unless there's something wrong with the quantities of food you eat. You get the point? Yes. Very typical. There are no abnormal symptoms or signs of significance in the vegans. The mean male vegan serum cholesterol was 181 as compared to mean male control level of 240. Meaning the vegans had even lower cholesterol than the mean in the control group. You get the point? That is significantly showing you that vegans have low vitals. Their body does not need elevated pressure, elevated cholesterol, elevated B12, elevated, meaning for a vegan to function normally, we don't need heightened levels of nutrients. Tuko pamoja? Now we are following me because we are trying to arrive at a conclusion. Urea levels were higher in controls than the meaning even our production of urea, because we don't actually convert a lot of protein into amino acids, we don't deaminate much of our protein, we use it for building. Our urea levels also do what? They are going down than the normals. The serum vitamin B12 level on an unfortified diet in the vegans was in the range of 30 to 360 with a mean of 236. In the control group, it was 120 to 740 with aminophobos 1, meaning we are still lower than the one, than the control group. Amino-36 and amino-41, you can see. Meaning the vectors were lower than the control group. We are not talking about the other groups that take B and the rest. This is just the control group. The various reports will as well be understood to illustrate that there is an abnormally high level of serum B12 in non-vegetarians, as to assume that there is an abnormally low level. So where is the abnormality? Where is the abnormality? Is it the vegans who have abnormally low, or the non-vegetarians who have abnormally high? Because they are moving together. It should not be assumed that the so-called low level of vitamin B12 in those who use no animal products represents a pathologically low level. Because most of the time when you visit a doctor's room and they check your B12 and they find that not fit what we eat, they'll tell you, by the way, kulani nyama, kunywa maziwa, nafaa kuanza. Because the moment they see it, they prescribe it as what? Pathologically low. Making sense?
Yeah.
It may be that there is a metabolic load in those who use animal products, causing them to require an especially high level of vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 elevation in the serum has been found in certain serious diseases and should not be empirically regarded as especially desirable. But when you have very high levels, they've been found in infections, they've been found in digestive problems. I didn't put all that here, there is a big journal. So I just put some of the points that I think were very important. The vegans in the study did not appear to need any more vitamin B12 than they already had in the serum, since they did not respond in any way to shots of B12 in large doses, although there were no symptoms of B12 deficiency. So even though they were being given shots of B12 in large doses to try and increase the one in the blood, what happened? Their levels remained just where they were. And that is very common with water-soluble vitamins. When you give an excess of vitamin C, the body will not reflect it, it will just flush it. The same thing with B12. Once the storage is enough, the body will not use it. It will just dispense with it. So they were finding there was no change. Practically all things of vitamin B12 deficiency occur in individuals who use. So who are the people who are culprits with this condition? The meat eaters, you get the point? Therefore, we can say that a dietary deficiency is not the usual cause of clinical syndromes involving low blood levels of B12. Even when pure vegetarians have a low vitamin B12 level, by currently understood laboratory standards, and by comparison with those who eat meat and other animal products, they have no deficiency stigma. Meaning the real point we are seeing here is that there is no correlation. This is a journal on January 20, 1995. They claim also to say that vitamin B12 deficiency occurs in subjects who fail to absorb B12 from the diet and in those who have inadequate dietary intake, usually associated with poor vitamin storage. So the point here is, one, there may be a problem with the liver that should be stored. Are you getting me? That is number one. Number two, there may be a problem with absorption because to absorb B12, you need something with what? Intrinsic factor, which is produced when? So if there is something wrong with your digestion, then you will not absorb B12. The problem is not deficiency. The problem is either storage or poor absorption. The latter group is composed mostly of alcoholic patients with liver disease, like I've told you. So many people who normally have pernicious anemia or they have megaloblastic anemia, and some of these conditions that come with low B12, usually you'll find they are found in those who have damaged livers and those who have liver disease, liver cirrhosis or maybe alcoholic fatty liver disease. Some of those things, and even liver cancers, can actually make people have B12 deficiencies. And anemia that is actually attached to it. After B12 combined with intrinsic factor from the stomach, it is absorbed by the ileum, that is in the small intestine. Hence, poor absorption results from the lack of intrinsic factor, from disease or removal of the ileum, or less commonly from successful competition for available vitamin B12 by bacteria. They normally call it a blind loop syndrome. or parasites. If someone has a large level of parasites, it may affect the absorption of B12. So other causes are suspected, among them certain toxic substances. There is much more that is unknown, that is known about B12 and its metabolism in the body. Just discovered in 1948, we don't know a lot yet. We can't say we know everything. Generally, the liver stores about 1,000 to 1,500 micrograms of B12. A normal liver should be capable of storing that much B12 for even up to 12 years. Now, these are genetic research. Ile engineer was 1 year. So they're saying up to how many years?
Hello.
If a person has a sick liver for any reason, his ability to store B12 is directly impaired. Now, question. Where do we get B12 for the vegetarian? Because you need it in the blood. You need even that low level. That is not pathologically low, but you need it because if you don't have it, you're going to be sick. Where do we get it? By the way, all vitamin B12 on this planet is eventually traced to synthesis by microorganisms. The reason why animals are known to be the source is because most animals, they either putrefy or they ferment. I mean, they putrefy, not ferment. Ferment is for sugars. They putrefy. So when we are taking the milk, there is contamination of bacteria and so many things. When we are taking the eggs, they say the same thing. By the way, is there anyone here who's understood something about pathology? How do they culture bacteria? What do they use to culture bacteria?
They use other blocks, like can use other blocks so you can take a substrate.
A substrate, is it? Which is the best source to obtain this from? You find most of them they use it as milk, isn't it? Because you are sure you will find bacteria because of the process. And that is the reason why yesterday he mentioned this. God ordained that milk should be from the mother to the mom. How did you check your milk when you were young? Did your mother give you? How did you check your milk for your mother? Do you use to? Use to start. What about the cow?
Same.
The idea is that milk should not pass through a storage. It should come from the mouth. You get the point? So whenever it passes through that, it must be contaminated. It must be harvested. And that is what we were discussing the other day. So that is the reason why only these things that have this bacteria and fungi are the ones that synthesize B12. The B12 is then available to animals that take that or their own products or grow the germs in their digestive tract. And that is the reason why we say animals are the major source of B12. But are we not animals? Now we look at that then. The B12 is stored in their tissues and secreted in their milk. And that is why by the way mothers give B12 to their kids. And that is the reason why we say the mothers who are breastfeeding need more B12. Remember?
Yes.
As a daily dosage because you give it to your kids. Where does a human who eats neither the microorganisms directly nor any animal product get its B12? Now this is where we want to clarify issues for tonight. Where do we obtain our own? There are several non-animal food sources of B12. While these sources may not be constant, it appears that they occur with sufficient regularity to supply the minute quantities of vitamin B12 that are needed by those who are not using animal products and are not abusing their health in any way that necessitates taking larger quantities of vitamin B12. These include wheat, soybeans, many common greens. These common diet, by the way, the B complexes, their sources also mostly have traces of B12, olives, and various fruits. And several other foods that occasionally have vitamin B12. We have the CLB. You heard of the CLB? That is normally sold along with B12. And also we have these ones are major sources, either in the food or on the food. For our purposes, it does not matter whether the food has incorporated the vitamin B12 within its structure or whether it is a contaminant on the surface. In any way it is eaten, it is available to the body system. So that is why we say in any diet, you need to, as much as possible, have raw salads and eat fruits raw. By the way, we shared with you that carbohydrates should be between 50 to 70% of what you eat every day for your energy. And the carbohydrate is not beneficial if it is refined. It must have the germ where the minerals are, and it must have the bran where the fiber is, you remember? But carbohydrates should be eaten more in the morning. Meaning if you're making a meal, I don't expect to find the carbohydrates in the night. Heavy ugali, heavy dairy, a lot of porridge, you get. Those things are supposed to be eaten in the morning to give you strength to enable you to carry duties during the day. But 11% of your food every day should be fruits. Meaning when you're planning a menu every day, make sure that 11% you are eating fruits, and fruits should never be mixed with vegetables. So find a way of combining them so that you are not snacking fruits, you're eating them with meat but not with the vegetables. Vegetables will be around 22%. When you eat those vegetables, 22% and 11% fruits, you will find traces of B12. And I told you, by the way, a salad should be eaten at least twice every week by every family. You have me? Meaning, kando na kupika mamboga, at least eat some raw. Put some cabbage, put some carrots in the salad, put some tomatoes, put onions. Make sure you put some things there. Make sure you eat salad. And remember, salad should be eaten before the meal. Tuko pamoja? Ukitaka watu waikule vizuri, usiache wakule ugali, mboga alafu. Hiyo salad itabaki na watu. It will not be eaten. Let them start with it, then let them eat. That is a good way of planning. So in this way, you will be able to find B12. And a good source of vitamin B12 is bacterial growth in the mouth. Now, this is very scientific. Around the teeth, the gums, and in the nasopharynx, around the tonsils, in the tonsillar crypts, and also in the cold and the base of the tongue. And that is why we say in the morning, begin your day with warm water. So that the B12 synthesized in the mouth can actually go down to the ileum, where it's supposed to be absorbed. You heard me? Mixing with the intrinsic factor from the throat. So meaning in the morning, you're not supposed to begin your day by brushing your teeth. Begin the day by taking some warm water to allow you to wash down the B12 that has been synthesized in your mouth, around the teeth, around the gums, and other places, and avoid a lot of intake of antibiotics because they destroy the bacteria that are supposed to assist you in synthesizing this thing. And that is why someone who is ever on amoxicillin, ever on I don't know which kind of antibiotic, you will be interfering with the regular production of B12. Even garlic is not best taken early in the morning when you wake up. So, you can take it later in the day if you're using it for treatment or something. But begin the day by making sure you take in the B12, and that will really help you. And in the bronchi and bronchial glands, it is evident that this source alone will supply or B12 for total vegetarian. Let me see for you was 2.1. 2.4, remember? Yes. Every day. Yeah. So you realize that at the end of the day, this issue is people make a big fuss about B12. So if people have these conditions that I'm talking about here, you may need supplementation of B12. If you meet someone who has any of this, number one, anyone who is taking meat and other animal products in the diet, causing an apparent requirement to maintain excessively high levels of B12, tell them check that. So what? Is it? They need higher levels than you. So we've seen a research has confirmed that. They need higher levels than you. Number two, people who are taking drugs or chemicals used which destroy B12, that are nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, and many over-the-counter and prescription drugs. So if someone is ever on medication, I would rather that they be chewing B12 at least daily. around between 30 to 50 micrograms. They need a supplementation, or they take 100 micrograms once every week. So if you meet someone who is always on medication, plenty of them, their B12 may go down, it may trigger an onset of anemia, either megaloblastic or pernicious or whatever, because they are having low B12. Another thing is a disease exists such as pernicious anemia, atherosclerosis, liver disease, or diabetes. By the way, I refer that diabetics should take B12 supplements if their diabetes is not well managed. The same also applies to those who are having any liver disease. So these are areas where now we cannot play gray. The amount you're making is enough. Am I making sense? These are areas now that you need excessively high or low levels, levels of vitamin C. And that is why I told you, by the way, the only source of vitamin C that is reliable is fruits. Tuko pamoja? And maybe and plenty of vegetables, but you need a lot of fruits. A high intake of fat. People who are taking a high intake of fat will have lower B12 levels. One major issue again is people who are taking. Science has discovered that oral contraceptives interfere with B12 synthesis and absorption of the body. So you may need a lot much more to deal with the body. And that is why people need classes on family planning. Oral contraceptives can trigger hypertension. Oral contraceptives can interfere with so many things in your system. They may even trigger the onset of fibroids and breast cancers and tumors, especially those ones which are estrogen related. An absence of certain other nutrients, especially calcium, can also make you take more advanced age. I tell most people that our grandparents who are very old and they've never lived a healthy lifestyle, they were never vegans, they never lived well, you may need to give them B12 what? Supplements. So I hope you're getting that we are not lacking caution. We are not being illogical in our B12 ideas. You get the point? Mm-hmm. There are people who may need what? Supplementation. Conditions such as cancer, surgery of the stomach or the bowel, a chronic infection such as tuberculosis, malaria, or parasite, this may interfere. Another thing is low thyroid function. That also may trigger you to actually begin checking that. I want to finish. I'll answer your questions, but today I won't answer the questions you have. I want to summarize a little on nutrition because I want you to go make a meal. So allow me to use the 5 minutes, just some 5 minutes to clarify a few issues, then I give you the assignment. So I want you to make a menu of plant-based pure diet. No milk, no eggs, no meat. So you're going to make a menu that entirely has that. And I want you to make sure that in your menu you use whole and refined grains, whole wheat, brown rice instead of white bread or white rice. So I want you to come up with something that is whole. Remember the carbohydrates make about 50 to 70% of what you eat every day. I want to see more carbs in your menu. You're getting it? So list all of them down before you make the menu and find out how you balance and the availability that you have with them. So make sure that throughout the day you are eating carbs and don't make sure it's value all through the week. Distribute, make sure there's wheat somewhere, make sure you have the arrowroots, the cassavas and the other things somewhere. There's a place for the rice and the others. You can even include the oatmeal. Use your imagination. But ensure that you have unrefined grains. Eliminate rich concentrated foods containing too much sugar, fat, and oil, salt, and protein. Those are we've spoken about already. Of course, we know that they're not supposed to eat in between meals. So meaning your meals should be how many hours apart? Include that in your menu. The menu should have the timing for your meal so that you know when you eat. It should be regular. So I don't expect your menu to be eating after every 3 hours. Eating after every 4 hours. Make sure they're 6 hours apart. And we talked about it is better students to eat 2 meals a day. If you can't make it 3, but the third one should be the last. The lightest and the smallest. But as a student, I think because you have so much time in class, make it 2. But I don't know how you do. Maybe some of you that will be suffering. What we want is when the third one has to come, make sure it's a light one. Supper should be eaten at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. So if it's a light one, it should be early. Should come early. Now, this is how you're going to measure your meal plan. Now, these are vegetarian food pyramid that I want you to use. If you just at it, you'll find what I say is very clear. Are you seeing the grains and the cereals? They make a large portion of the whole day, about 50% or not. So make sure the grains and the cereals make the large portion. You know the base is large. And then the pulses and the legumes. The legumes are supposed to make actually 9%. By 9%, that should be the portion that you give the legumes. By that I mean the peas, the lentils, and the dry beans. The dry beans, which ones do you know? Don't just write beans. Mention the type of beans that you're giving for the day. Don't just write their beans. You get it? Try to give the variety of the types that you're giving. We have the yellow beans, we have
kidney beans,
garbanzo beans, kidney beans,
mung beans, mung beans.
We have the roast cocoa beans, yeah. Yeah, black beans, we have so many types of beans. So just make sure that, yeah, butter beans, isn't it? So you need to understand that. Now, if we come here, we say vegetables will make 22%. And remember, at least 2 or 3 times every week, you need to eat salads. Are we together?
Yes.
So I want to see the salad somewhere at least 2 or 3 times in your menu. And salad is situated that you put properly to get the point. Sili kitungu, na nyanya, na carrots, na cabbage, na yeah, it's like kachumbari. Just that it's a bit different. Then you can add avocado to bind it if you want. You put some lemon to dress it, and some salt. It's very sweet. You get the point? I want to see if you getting on that point. Fruits, we say 11%. So I want you to have a sustainable fruit every day. I'm not saying you spend all your money buying very expensive, but put something reasonable and sustainable. I'm serious. I'll go through all the menus you write on that Friday. I can make corrections for you by the way you are serious about making one. These are very serious assignments. Another thing is not empty. You say how much? A level handful. I didn't say mark those words. So make sure you underline the word level. Are you together? A level handful, or you can grind them and then you put tablespoons in your meat. You are together? Yeah. So make sure you put that also there. Remember that the ones that are on top here are optional. And that is the reason why we remove them. I know there are some vegetarians who insist on taking dairy and eggs, but I've shared with you that even this, a time has come that we need to get out from our diet. So, mafuta si chakula, the ones we use to cook, are we together? They're just to give flavor, the same with salt. So those ones, table salt is not the best to use. The best salt to use is Himalayan salt or sea salt. They're together, but I prefer Himalayan salt because it is better. And make sure you include your water intake, how you are taking water in your meal. They're together. Maybe 2 glasses when you wake up, 2 glasses between morning and lunch, 2 glasses include how you take in your water. And make sure you bring something about your exercise. I want to also see what time do you exercise as a student. So include the time that you set aside to exercise. Because we are serious about a real change. It does not mean you have to go for jogging. Are we together? You can just walk. There are many things that you can do, but at least have some form of exercise. And time for fresh air and sunshine and meditation, of course. So make sure you come up with something of this type that is going to aid us as we move forward. There are some other principles that are very common, but maybe I can ask a question. You see there. How many portions of white rice are needed for the same amount of fiber that is found in brown rice? Then if I'm giving white rice, how many portions do I need to eat the same fiber as the one I found in brown rice? So we also think that sugar lowers the ability of the immune system to work. quantity of eating food, eat more food in the morning and eat less in the evening. Timing of meals. When should you eat? We talked about that. 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. Unhealthy timing can cause
Indigestion.
indigestion. It will make you dream that you're falling in a hole that has no end. It can make you overweight because it interferes in the way you process and digest food and without
Thank you.
your body has a clock. If you're eating at 8 every day, make sure you reduce your meat. The same day. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So make sure you take more at breakfast than any other. From a third to a half of the daily calories to be eaten when?
At breakfast.
So make breakfast your heaviest and have a lot of carbs for the breakfast. That will be very important. Glasses of water. These are planned. You can have 2 glasses when you rise, 2 glasses mid morning, 2 glasses mid afternoon, 2 glasses evening. This is the kind of best way, by the way, you can drink water when you are full most of the time. So remove the tea from your breakfast. I don't want to see tea, chai, and tea. Remember, typical breakfast is ideal. Yeah. Just do your lentils, do your beans, do your whatever, and make sure you eat some meat. That is an eggs. As you could. Money saved on tea can be spent on. Yeah, so you can decide that in your breakfast. Okay. Some oats. You can put some oats together. So say something that you can prepare some stew. That stew can be meaty. You get the point. Just give me an example so that you know how you're doing it. So you see some cocoa there. You see some beans for the protein. And maybe some of garlic if you want. But I don't think this is garlic. This should be some oats that have been made in some way. Or you can spend on colorful vegetables on the meal. So you can add vegetables also. You don't have to. Today you can eat fruit, tomorrow you can eat. And a salad does not mean you can understand. You have to eat. Yeah, sufficient. So each day you can have a portion of raw vegetable, and then green vegetable, and an orange fruit or a vegetable. So find a way of mixing. You can see how when you make them nice, you enjoy it. You also find pleasure in eating them. So you can do that. And then remember, this is now for people who have families. Meeting is usually. Yeah, so if you have roommates and others, make sure you eat together. That is the time you can share. It's good for the engagement. And peace of mind. It's a source of attention you have. At the end of the day. So these are things that they have already covered. And I think never eat food when you are nervous, in a hurry, or upset about something. So if you are in a hurry, just don't eat, come back immediately. Or wake up. Don't be always in a hurry. You know, some of us are always in a hurry for no reason. When you are nervous, by the way, the food will not be well digested. You interfere with that. You don't be a carbon. You don't be a carbon. So I think much of this major point here you've already covered with you and you understand them quite well. An angry stomach is usually alcohol, nicotine, coffee, tea, stress, excess salt, vinegar, irregularity, excessive what? Spices. By the way, all the peppers are banned. Red, black, and green. The only pepper that is medicinal is cayenne pepper. So don't be using peppers. They will irritate your stomach, they'll make it angry, and most likely they can cause some ulcers. Black pepper causes cancer of the stomach, by the way. You eat now you know. Black pepper. So the most irritating spices in food are cinnamon, mustard, cloves, nutmeg, paprika, peppers, the black, white, and red, like I told you. So cinnamon can be used to sweeten or remove some things in food, but the amount that is used is not supposed to irritate in any way. You get it? So there's a way you can abuse some of these things and make them terrible.
We are told the controlling power of appetite will prove the ruin of thousands. When if they are conquered at this point, they would have had moral power to gain victory over every other temptation of Satan. But those who are slave to appetite will fail in
The fighting Christian character.
that is the reason why we are talking about this. Certain temptations to indulge the appetite will be more powerful and more difficult to overcome as we near the end. And you can see that. So it's a decision, by the way, on coming up with this menu. If you don't make this menu, you will find it very easy to make a transition. I will be making corrections on your menu that I'll hand them back over to your chat email. The seal of God will be made on the forehead. That is meaning in your character, in your mind. That means your nervous system. That means your brain. That means what you eat. And that is why we are told our first parents don't eat through the indulgence of our only hope of regaining either through the farm of appetite and passion. Abstemiousness in dance and control of all the passions will preserve the intellect and give mental and moral data, enabling men to bring all their propensities under the control of the higher power and to discern between right and wrong, the sacred and the common. See how they're injecting the chicken? People should be taught to prepare food without the use of. Tell them that the time will soon come and there will be no safety using eggs, milk, cream, or butter because disease in animals is increasing in proportion to the increase of wicked and among them. So if you look at these both points, you realize God will give his people ability and task to prepare wholesome food without these things. Let our people discard all unwholesome recipes. Let them learn how to live healthfully, teaching to others what they have learned. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. So I think that is where we end. I know you have questions. I only want us to be clear that you are going to do the assignment or you are not going to do it. You're going to do it, isn't it? Come up with a menu that can work for you or for your family. You bring it. I will try and see what I can add in it that is not there. I will try to help you adjust it. So I'll take time with everyone that you make. But please, I have done this in churches before. Take some time to make a good menu. We are together. Yeah, don't just scribble some things in a few minutes and then you bring. Sit down and look at your life. How much money will you put into it? Is this something that you can afford? Can you live by it? Put in the exercise. When are you doing the exercise in the morning? Have you put some time for it? Function, the dash, and all those things together. Tomorrow evening I will collect. Tomorrow I will handle diseases. And some of the ideas and mindset you need to have regarding them. But I want you just to be clear on the disease that you want me to cover today. Which one would you want me to talk about? Because we don't have all the time. Majorly. Do you want me to talk about cancer? Or do you want me to talk about diabetes? Which one do you feel? So that we can agree. And tomorrow I will tackle that properly. Ulcers. Someone has said ulcers, so we have ulcers as one. Any other? Diabetes, Any other? Cancer. So cancer, ulcers, and diabetes. I can cover each of them, but one must be a major one. Okay. I know I can't handle all of them completely well. So I want you to vote. How many are for ulcers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, 8. How many are for diabetes? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many are for cancer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, I can't have it. The others I'm sure are still inside. So I'll cover more cancer, but I will put in answers and diabetes. I know you have questions. Please, we can deal with them tomorrow so that we go due to time. Let's write up. Let's write the screen. I know today we spend time. Will forgive me for that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you learned. Give us the power and ability to implement. This is our prayer in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Please don't forget the menu.